So welcome back to the Improvement Season podcast. It's been a while, I know, 2 weeks of just being gone, hiatus. But this time we are back from, I would just call it the summer break. So yeah, Steve was back from the holiday. I'm back from becoming a father, like officially. And now here we are. Hey Steve, by the way.
I'm good. How are you? I didn't ask.
I didn't ask. Yeah,
that was more automatic response.
I'm very good. Lots of things, of course, happened over the past previous weeks, and I think we will delve into that in just a couple of seconds or so.
How many messages did you get from depressed listeners who didn't have the improvement season?
A couple.
I really want to be like, I got hundreds of messages. I think I got like 5 at most.
Yeah, something like that. I did.
I'd love to think people
I
miss
think
us
we have
that much.
some loyal listeners. I don't think that there are many people outside of that small niche that are actually regularly listening to episodes of ours, except for these loyal ones. Thank you guys for actually missing the Improvement Season podcast and especially like regularly listening to that. Except for the past two weeks. So, yeah.
So let's dive back 2 weeks ago. So yours have been crazy, really. You've had a lot.
Yeah.
On.
So 2 weeks ago, the first crazy thing that happened, well, it's not even 2 weeks ago. It's now 3 weeks or so with JP. So Jordan Peters, not Peterson, by the way, that's a psychologist. So with Jordan Peters, so after the roundtable, not really roundtable, after the podcast recording with you and Mike, he decided to actually give it a go in regards to training with RER, and he messaged you and he did a post over on Instagram, and I was already in touch with him because I sent him all the stuff for the podcast episodes, what we are typically doing with all of our guests. And then I was just saying, in regards to his post that he brought out over on Instagram, how much I appreciate his mindset and approach to everything. That a guy with his training experience, like he's training since the age of 13 or 14 or so, his size, his strength level, his experience is willing to listen to people like us, right? I mean, come on, this speaks for itself, and that just speaks for him, especially what a guy he is and what he truly wants. And I don't know who said it, and it's not really important, but the thing is, the guys that truly want to become the very best, they are willing to try everything. No matter who says it or who gives them the suggestion or recommendation, right? Independent of their former beliefs, they will give it a try, or they will at least think about it, right? And if you don't, then do you truly want to become the very best, or are you more concerned about sticking to your biases or to your former beliefs? And what he did was just like, to me, so positive that I needed to reach out to him and say, like, mate, this is just fantastic, and what you are doing is a true scientific mindset, independent of your former beliefs, of your former observations, of your past experiences. You are willing to just give something else a try, which is amazing. And unfortunately, you come across something like that too infrequently.
Yeah.
Right? And ever since then, we started to, I wouldn't say work together, but I'm taking kind of care of his programming. Still, it's weird for me to say that because he came up with the structure, right? Because he has been training for a very long time. He knows best how to set things up. For example, we have on 2 days bicep exercises at the beginning of a workout, right? Who am I then to come across and be like, no, let's not do that, right? And it's kind of, if you just look at this setup in it for itself, it is kind of a weird setup, but probably what he figured out over a long period of time. We will definitely tweak it here and there because due to the way he's now training with RER, with volume accumulation and all that kind of stuff, probably you can now switch and changed the exercise selection, the training frequency for certain body parts, instead of what he's done before, where he just went all out on everything, basically, right? And he was only capable of doing like 2 sets per exercise, where it was just like 1 all out and then a down set, right? And now we completely changed that around already. Did 1 mesocycle now. He has today, so a couple of days back when you're listening to that episode, he had his last session for this mesocycle. Then he takes a deload, which is also a little bit uncommon for him. All right, and then we go into the next mesocycle with those adjustments, and probably also discuss maybe making some tweaks here and there in regards to the exercise selection, maybe also frequency, because I could think that he could get away with maybe something like a higher delt frequency, because right now he has more of a dedicated shoulder day,
right,
where it's just like, okay, maybe we should just spread it across the entire week.
Cool.
And have a little bit more space and energy for something else, maybe, right? And that is super interesting, because this is when do you have someone with that experience and that strength level and that size as a bodybuilder who now transitions over to that? And when you then can take that as, well, when do you ever get the chance to take that as a case study? It is super rare. So it is super interesting for me, but also the same way around for JP as well. And yeah, that is just super excited to follow along.
No, I mean, we spoke about it on like our voicemails very briefly, and kind of talking about how exciting that is. And I can imagine that being like, that sounds super exciting, because it's challenging. That's something that you've never ever trained someone that experience. No. Like, this will be the most experienced person you'll probably ever coach. Like, I can't imagine coaching.
And
like,
also probably the toughest mindset I've ever worked with, and will probably work with for a very long time.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can just throw everything at him and he will just go out and execute. There's not a question about motivation. There's not a question about, okay, am I willing to do it or not? Or has something come up in my life that kept me away from doing that session? No. So in that regard, that's also why I'm not taking care of anything about his nutrition or stuff like that, because I know for a fact he has everything in check, like 100% there, right? And also I'm being in close touch with him on a daily basis, talking about the previous session, talking about rest days, just to get an idea of how he functions, how he works, because this is a completely different beast you're working with right now, instead of just like general population, which I count myself towards as well, right? Just a general lifter, for example, and he's way outside of that spectrum. And that's why I rather discussing things with him instead of just saying like, okay, this is what we are doing because I think it's best. Right now, I have no idea what's truly best for him. And this is something that we figure out together right now. And I think figuring out this together is probably easier than doing it by yourself.
Yeah, I was incredibly happy to hear. Well, first of all, when he was asking me questions, it took me by surprise. And then obviously he'd asked me, I think he also asked Mike. And then obviously you reached out and he decided Pascal's the man to help me do this properly, I guess, which is the great thing, because I'm always concerned, and you see it a lot of the time. And I've been bad for doing this, where I've assumed something is something and I've maybe bad mouthed it or poo-pooed it. I haven't given it true reading and true understanding, and that's not fair. So that's like a straw man almost. So I'm glad he's actually getting someone who knows the system, knows what to look at, what to hear about, and the fact that he's able to like, talk about his recovery with you, how much of a stressor it's being, maybe like a bit about like soreness, pumps, these sort of things, like the stuff that we're monitoring and really getting some biofeedback is so exciting. And then you can, over time, transition him more and more towards, hopefully, a more, well, like any client, more and more towards a more optimal sort of position. Like every client we bring on, it's not a case of bang, we know exactly what you need. It's a case of, okay, did this work? Let's run through. This is what I think should work. And then it's transitioning. Something I'm really interested to hear about Jordan and with yourself, programming a little bit for him. Obviously, he's so used to training like to concentric failure all the time. How far away from failure have you managed to like, is it a case of persuading him? Would he commit to like a 3-4 RER? Or?
Yeah. So we started out with something like 4 and 3 RER, and I wanted to progress through the weeks with an RER like this. But we quickly came to the realization that it's not how he can train at the moment, because he just feels that he leaves something on the table, because he has been training like this his entire career, right? And we all know that feeling, that acute feedback that you're getting from training to concentric failure. It's just like an immediate feedback that you're receiving. If you're training or having like reps in reserve and you're not used to that, it just feels like, okay, something is off. I'm not training hard enough, right? And that mindset we needed to take into consideration as well, right? It isn't the most it isn't the approach I would recommend doing for everyone or most of my clients, but because considering where he comes from, we need to train that way, and probably because he is always trained that way and pushing really to failure, like true failure. Just look at his videos, right? He is probably now, with keeping 1 or 2 reps in reserve, so much more recovered than before, right? For other people, it's already quite fatiguing in it for itself to push to a 2 or 1 RER. But because he is so capable of pushing very close, like even beyond failure sometimes, right? He's now, when he leaves like 1 or 2 reps in reserve, he's fine and he can recover in between the sets. Right now, we're doing like quite a high amount of volume for someone with his strength level, and pushing it sometimes up to like 5 sets for a certain exercise. This is now week number 3, so we can't really push too many accumulation weeks as well. What I would love, by the way, I'm totally transparent, but these are also things I already discussed with Jordan. I would love to have something like a 4-to-1 paradigm instead of a 3-to-1 paradigm, but because he's still so used to training to failure, and we need to do that to keep it on track as well, we need to kind of take the both positive things from both worlds, right? So how can we accumulate the most amount of volume while still satisfying the need to push to failure, right? And this is just like the compromise that you have to take then. Okay, 3 weeks it is probably then, and also something like in that volume range where we're at right now, and not further, because he's already saying and this is exactly what I told him before this overreaching week. Now I want by the end of the week that you are craving that deload, right? That you feel like you deserved it, and now we already like put in the spreadsheet. I saw it in the morning, said like, okay, I'm snappy, I'm moody, I start to don't want to train. And this is the last session, and that last session is just like overkill, like truly overkill. It's just like 3 hours already in week number 2. And yeah, something like this you need to take into consideration. That is always where we are then saying, okay, individualization for people. It is already becoming kind of a buzzword because so many people have used that term, but still just programmed the same way for each and every client, right? But this is what it is, right? Actually analyzing the needs, the personal preferences, all that kind of stuff, and then go ahead and program, right? It doesn't need to be optimal on paper, but it needs to be optimal from that individual, right? And this is what we are hopefully doing at the moment. And the workload, the total amount of workload he's doing at the moment is 2 to 3 times as much as he has done before. So in all honesty, I would be very surprised if he wouldn't be growing by that, like majorly. But if he doesn't, it's still a win, because now we are one step closer to the truth, and we know now more what is appropriate and what is probably then necessary for a guy like his training experience and all that kind of stuff, right? Because the theory I still do have is that a guy with his level of experience probably needs to push to failure more often. How often that is, I don't know. And I think that no one of us does, right? Yeah. Because these are the outliers, and you don't really often get the chance to take a look over their shoulders or even say something like, do the program for them.
It's the fact that he's doing like triple his workloads. When you think about the literature that's out there, of course, not based on Jordan, it's based on lesser trained individuals. And we have some on fairly trained individuals, but people who aren't even necessarily as trained as either of us. But it's all indicating that, yes, he's ticking the box for growth. And if he's getting the like biofeedback in terms of, and I don't always like relying on that, but when we only have anecdote to go for someone of his level of development, it's kind of like, well, is he like, he sounds overreached. He's getting that much volume done in terms of number of hard sets. He's doing a hell of a lot more than he was before. That sounds like growth to me. So I really hope he gives it longer because like we all know, a month isn't enough time to really know what's going on.
It's not easy for him, and I totally get that, because first and foremost, he has built his entire physique upon this style of training. Second of all, he has probably produced lots of great athletes with that style as well. And especially, he gets a lot of flack from outside, from people who are basically a little bit too biased. Shitty. It is, right? And especially like also renowned coaches being like looking over his shoulder. So you're doing that RER stuff, Jordan, don't do it. You're just ruining your physique and you won't be growing. You will be losing muscle and all that kind of stuff, where it's just like, that is a ridiculous claim to make, because even if it doesn't work out, you won't be losing muscle in that process. No chance. I mean, you're still inducing a high level of stressor, right? And also you're just doing more workload. I can't see how you should regress then, even unless you're doing too much volume, right? And the progression isn't there. But it's just, I don't know. It's just these people are too caught up in their own bubble and thought that their way is the only way to success or something like that. And maybe we don't even know from the literature or from science how much of an impact drugs actually have. We have an idea of, yes, they do impact like the physique and muscle development quite heavily, but how much, to what extent, we simply don't know. And it could easily be, I do remember the time when Mike talked about insulin at the London seminar, and he said like, this is crazy. This is crazy. And I know now that other people who take that and who completely changed their physique in just an off season or summer, they take insulin, GH, that combination, and it's just ridiculous what this does, right? And you don't even need to have your programming or nutrition fully in check. Nutrition more so because of carbohydrates, but you don't really need to have the training fully in check, and you still be absolutely massively insane. Right? And to that extent, we simply don't know whether these coaches are so successful because they have the elite there. They can just throw everything at them when it comes to training to concentric failure. They don't get injured, while at the same time, they are so dedicated that they just do everything that you throw at them in regards to nutrition as well, and timing and all that kind of stuff. And then also the drug protocol, right? So it could easily be that. And it would be foolish just to say that RER training like that is just a foolish way and you will regress or lose muscle mass. But I can understand where then doubts creep into Jordan's head, because
happens to the best of us.
Yeah, totally. You've been training like this for the entire life. So let's just say you believe in a certain religion, and all of a sudden you start to question that religion. And then all of a sudden other people come into you like, I don't know, from church, for example, and say like, no. If you now start to discontinue believing in God, you will get into hell, right? You better believe now, right? And there aren't any kind of facts to prove it, that this outcome will happen, right? So starting then to question that, I think it's just a healthy thing. And I think it's just like a good thing that Jordan is doing what he's doing right now, because in the end, what I just said there, it will be a win no matter what. Because if it turns out that this doesn't produce more gains for him or bring him to the next level, perfect. Then he can go back to his old style of training, right? So it's just a win, no matter the outcome.
Yeah, it's scary when people get into a bit of an echo chamber, and they kind of, I think Jordan in many ways for a lot of people has been the guy for like intensity and training to failure, and he's kind of been the person to look up to for that. So and this is why it's even more impressive that he's decided to try a different route to just see, because he is open-minded and, like you said, scientifically minded, and he's listening to Mike, who obviously, Mike and Jared, they're two people we obviously know who are special sports supplements and doing tremendously well on this style of like training. The frustrating thing for me to watch and hear this is because I think a lot of the time, like, not to say there's like sides particularly, but for us who use like the volume landmarks, reps in reserve, we theorize and can understand why people train to failure all the time and how they can also make progress and why it can work. And we don't like poo-poo it as terrible. It's just a case of it's just not the way we think necessarily is the best. But versus that, often it's not the same. We don't get the same kind of payback, which is frustrating, because then it does make people on kind of our side who maybe are a bit not weak-minded, because I'd not say I'm weak-minded, but I've certainly been like, oh, people are saying that this is like training like a pussy. I shouldn't do this. This is like a waste of time. And I'm so glad that I eventually got to a point where I was just confident enough in myself and what I was doing and executing, and saw great results with it. And I think that's kind of, I don't know, it's a good lesson for people hearing it, and you put it beautifully.
And the good thing is also that Jordan isn't doing it by himself. He has Corin at his side, and also Joey
Yes, I'm following him now.
Ballinger or Bollinger? I would say Ballinger, probably, not Bollinger. And they do it together, right? So having training partners who do the same stuff is probably very helpful, because you can have an objective eye on what they are doing, how they are progressing, etc., etc. And also just to keep you on track. By the way, he just posted yesterday a set of overhead presses, right? Yeah. And there was one guy in the comment section saying like, okay, that first set was the most intense one RER set I've ever seen, right? And I do remember when Jordan started announcing that he's now training or giving RER training a try, people just like, okay, the videos will start to become very boring. Who wants to see a 4 RER on a set? But just imagine, mate, I mean, just take a look at the intensity Jordan brings to each and every set, and also the weight he's using. I mean, fuck me, everyone knows that if you're squatting something like 200 kilogram, just for a guy our size, right, and do a 4 RER, that is still keeping my heart rate very, very high, and also ripping my quads apart.
200 kilos, Jesus. Right. Yeah, that's like my one.
Yeah, but I mean, something like that, right? I mean, like a very, very high load for people our size. Same goes for someone like Jordan if he does a hack squat. I mean, even 4 RER is highly stimulative. Yeah. Like, I couldn't even do one repetition with his 10 repetition max. I mean,
and I personally, it's always funny. I personally find it incredibly satisfying watching people who are, it doesn't matter how strong really, but people who are really strong, it is quite impressive when they're big and they have really great form. And this is like, it frustrates the hell out of me to see guys who are really big doing like leg press or like some sort of hack squat, and they've got like massive knee valgus and they're pushing through like past technical failure. And I'm just like, I know little kids, well, not kids necessarily, but teenagers will watch this, look up to these guys and push to that point. It's just like, that's not great. But Jordan has like pristine technique. He knows the importance of that. And I'd be like, I'm obviously biased, but watching him just do any of this kind of leaving some reps in reserve would be really interesting to see. I think he's documenting it on his members website as well, isn't he? So we can plug that a little bit for him. And actually, I don't know how we should do an episode, but we should definitely get Jordan on. And I don't know, I'm almost like, the right person to interview him may not even be me, because you're the one doing the programming. So it might
but I'm not a good interviewer. I'm not just, I mean, I would ramble a lot. I don't know. I don't think that I would be a good interviewer. So this is your job.
We definitely got to get him on and review how he found.
That's a really good idea, actually.
I'm sure he'd be game,
especially with the episode we've done like a couple of weeks back, where he talked about pivotal reps and all that kind of stuff and his training style. And then the episode together with Mike where they both discussed like reps in reserve, and now a couple of weeks later, reps in reserve training. I mean, that would be very interesting to hear.
Just to hear his thoughts and insights on the things we've commented about here. I think I can almost feel bad talking about him without him here, because I'm sure he'd have some good things to say, because he's like very well spoken, a really smart dude. So apart from Jordan, that obviously was a big part of your week. And you had something probably even more important that also happened.
Yeah, so last week I finally became officially a dad. And it happened very suddenly. So Katie and I joked around like the entire week, like, okay, did we miscalculate the date and all that kind of stuff? Because the due date was on the 10th of August. And basically 2 weeks before the birth, when she was finally allowed to then move around again and be a little bit more de-stressed, nothing was going on anymore. She didn't really have those kind of severe symptoms, no cramps, no, like all that kind of stuff, right? So we were just walking around on that day, typical day, and Hugo was at his grandparents, and we were just walking. Just a typical day, right? And then all of a sudden, we've been at home at around 4. All of a sudden, she started, what's it called in English? Like when the pain is starting.
Contractions?
Contractions, exactly. Like severe contractions. And then on a frequent basis, like every single minute, which is kind of odd because it normally starts like a little bit more infrequent, and then once it is below every 5 minutes, you then pack your stuff and go to the hospital, right? And it happened all of a sudden and on a very frequent basis. And Katie just like said, okay, holy shit, I think we need to go to the hospital soon, right? And then I had dinner. I basically asked her like, okay, is there time for dinner? And she said, yeah, go ahead, do that. Because she also thought that it's going to take so much longer because the birth of Hugo was 26 hours and the birth of Tony was complete. So with the first contraction until when she was lying in the not in the emergency room, after the emergency room, because she had her placenta removed. Is it called placenta in English? Yeah, removed. So it was 2.5 hours, like total. From the first contraction. Efficient. Yeah, that is very efficient. So she thought that it's going to take a lot longer before we have to leave. So I had a little bit of dinner and she basically said like, okay, Pascal, you have to call the hospital now because it's really feeling like severe and that is coming. And we just packed the stuff. I called the hospital. The hospital is just around the corner. I got into the car. We're stuck in traffic a little bit. And she was just like, oh shit, I have the feeling that the baby's coming already here in the car. So we went, it's crazy.
Had the water broken yet?
No. And then we got into the hospital. She was already sweating all over her face, as if she's, I don't know, like in a horror movie where someone got an infection and is walking through the streets, right? Like with his face down and eyes shut and all that kind of stuff, right? And people are just like, ew, what's going on with him, right? And this is the way she looked like. And she was just like walking to the emergency room. And I was already going a little bit further to prepare everything to let the hospital know that we are now there. And then I went straight into the hospital, into the emergency room or the birth room. And the doctor just said like, okay, everything is open here. The baby will come in 4 minutes. It didn't happen in 4 minutes, but like 10 minutes. And very efficient, very crazy. A major event in my life. I mean, it's crazy to see that little guy now. I would have never anticipated to feel that way. No matter what people are saying, right? And the same goes for me when I'm saying like, this is an unreal feeling and it's so surreal and you love that person already from the get-go and you would be willing to die for that individual without hesitation. even though you don't know that small person, right? It's crazy. I mean, what this causes in you is life-changing. And whenever I see him, right, and what can he do now? Nothing.
I heard him make some noises.
He's very quiet, which is cool. So he doesn't scream a lot. But what does he do? He sucks the titties of his mom and poops, right? But still, you just look at that little guy. You adore him. Like, it's crazy. It is so crazy.
All I can think of, like, when you were describing it, I was just almost putting myself in Katie's shoes. I was like, the first time you give birth must be one of the scariest things you ever do in your life, because you have no idea how that feels. Like, that would, like, just having, I don't know, if I get contractions, like if I get a cramp and I've never had a cramp before, that would freak the shit out of me. And that's scary. So,
she was
to all female mums.
Yeah.
Female mums.
I mean, very. So when I was in that room, I've never heard in my life these type of screams. And they were so awful to listen to. So when your loved one is sitting there and screaming the life out of herself, right? Is like, these weren't like screams when you are angry or so. These were like very, very sharp pain screams. Like as if someone is dying or murdered, or I would imagine that's the way it sounds like, right? Like these very intense screams that are just going underneath your skin into your mark. And I was just I was standing behind Katie and I couldn't help her, right?
No.
I felt so helpless and I was just like, fuck, I can't do anything at all. And she's just screaming, and the screams went into my ear and they just stuck with me because they were so frightening.
Yeah.
And that must be so crazy for a woman to go through something like that. I've never heard screams like this ever before in my life. Ever. And that was not funny to look at.
No.
Not funny to experience, because I love Katie with all of my heart. And if there's someone, and you can't do anything about that, it's just,
I have a
crazy
really
feeling as well.
I was going to make a joke, and I don't feel like it's appropriate now. I was going to say that's Jordan going to Nort Repson Reserve, but I actually what you say there, I think there's something to it. I think where like we hear certain noises, and like baby screaming is particularly like it makes us respond in like we don't like it, because it's like nature calling to us to like do something. Or I don't know if I've been on lucky enough to been on safari and heard lions roar, and it's like you can hear it on TV. It's nothing like in real life. That's scary as fuck. Like it just causes a reaction in you. I can only imagine what the screams of someone that you love about when they're actually terrified, because I haven't even seen Charlotte cry, let alone like scream. If she screamed, I don't know what I'd do. Like it would just be like something, I don't know, something would happen.
Probably, I think you're completely right that there's probably something ingrained in us from an evolutionary standpoint. And yeah, when do you ever hear screams like this? Unless you are a murderer, and I don't think that we have murderers listening to the Improvement Season podcast.
Not current murderers.
Who knows? Yeah.
But you hear stories of like, if I don't know, the typical one is like if your children were trapped under a car and you're just suddenly, you can, whoever you are, suddenly, I don't think it's necessarily true, but you hear like people get like super strength because the body just is like, you switch everything off and you can just do like superhuman things when like that really instinct kicks in. And I know Eddie Hall talked about when he did like his deadlift, like world record, and he just locked into, and that's what he imagined, like his children dying underneath some like a car, and crazy, like he just locked into that. He barely ever uses it, and he actually like fainted after the lift because it was just like so intense. And it's
the power
you've had some crazy
visualization
weeks.
Right?
Yeah, visualization. That's been researched, hasn't it? So
yeah, totally. No, absolutely. Yeah, crazy weeks. And now this week I didn't do any kind of check-ins, but my clients were very well aware of that. Now next week is back to normal, also with everything else. Still crazy because there's the saying, and I already told you, I can't really, I don't know if there's a saying like this on English, but I just directly translated it to like, if you have a child, you have none. And if you then have two, like, this is a completely different thing and kind of disaster, because I mean that Hugo is now 3. He just now came to realize that he's not the center of the world anymore, which is very hard for him to swallow and to accept. He's just like confused, like very much confused, and also emotionally confused. Sometimes he doesn't really know how to act and how to react on certain situations and stuff like that. And then you have to take care of now 2 children who very much need your full attention. And before that, you could always like, okay, Katie, can you take care of Hugo? Yeah. Right? And now it's just like, can you take care of 2 children? Which is kind of a little bit too much, and you always have to kind of be there as well. So yeah, it's just these are going to be interesting weeks and months moving forward. But I'm also very much I'm very much excited for that, and also that's the reason why I'm probably moving this office here to an external office, so that I have work and family life very much separated from one another.
It's an interesting thing, because I've always thought, it's great that I work from home, and if I ever have a child, I can be there like all the time. It's like in practice, like you're experiencing, it may not be as like great as it sounds. I guess hopefully you can find offices nearby so that, like, I don't know, like your gym is near.
I have already someone where I could move in. So, and there's a gym just around the corner, which is good as well. But it's like you said, it seems so appealing. And I think with only 1 kid at home, it is. But there were already challenging weeks there when the kindergarten has closed or so for 3 weeks. Now the summer break, right? I had a very hard time to focus and stay concentrated, because Hugo's knocking at my door, and I don't want to be that father who's just like, no, I have to work, right? I can't right now. Especially when I'm there, he doesn't understand what work really is, and that he's not allowed to get into my room and stuff like that. And I don't want to be that guy. I rather want them to move outside, even if that's a little bit more inconvenient for me. But it's probably healthier for my situation, and especially for the family, because it's then truly separated from another. And I think that this is probably a beneficial thing.
Yeah, the only experience I've had is like trying to work from my parents' home, and like family around, and it's just, even like the internet's bad, but even with good internet, I can only, like, it's just so distracting. It's always so difficult. And even actually, I suppose I've had it where Charlotte's had like a day off work and I'm working, and then I just don't want, she's sitting in the lounge, I don't want to ignore her, and it's just like, it does make life a lot more difficult. So
totally. And this is what you have then. Now Katie she was at home for the last 6-7 months or so, right? And she will be at home with the little one for the next year. So for me, if the baby is there and I'm already so drawn towards that baby, I wouldn't be productive. And the thing is, I have to set priorities. Sure, I can be there for my family, right? But if I want to still make it work for me with Revise Strong and all that kind of stuff, and that is very important for me as well, you can't have it all, right? And you have to then prioritize and redistribute your focus on a day-to-day basis. You have to do a little bit of time management, right? And yes, I want to be the best dad I possibly can, but I couldn't be the best dad I possibly can if I only were a dad. Because then money doesn't come in, then I couldn't, secure their future from a monetary perspective. Also, I wouldn't be satisfied with what I'm doing right now when I'm only like focusing on being there all the time, right? And that's why I think it's just the best, because then you can focus on both. Of course, not 100%. That won't ever happen again, maybe like in 20 years when the children are leaving again. But now it's like, okay, the day has 24 hours, not really 24 hours because you have to sleep. But let's say the day has, in our world, like 16 hours, so that you get plenty of sleep. 16 hours is a lot. There won't be as much downtime as there was before, but that's absolutely all right, I think.
I had something I was going to say. Oh, that's the word. It was the, we've said it before, but I always think it's worth repeating. It's like the thought of being selfish to be selfless, kind of putting the air mask on yourself in the airplane so that you can take care of yourself. Because if you don't take care of number one, you can't take care of others. I think it's always worth remembering that.
Yeah, and Jordan, I said, Jacob, when he was over in Bath.
Oh, yeah.
He made me realize one thing, and that is when children are at a certain age, the first couple of years, yes, it is important to be around and show them that you are one of the key people in their life. But what they truly need is their mother, because the mother feeds them and gives them everything, basically what they need. It is what it is, right? And all they want in the first couple of years is just to survive, because their instinct is telling them to, right? And because of that, the most important person is the mother, at least if she's breastfeeding. And in that case, I think what Jacob then said, like he Skyped with his children and of course with his wife as well. But his older one, 4 years old, she already said like, "Oh, Daddy, I miss you, and all that kind of. When are you coming home?" Broke his heart, right? And the other one, I think she's now 1 or 1.5 years old. She was just like calling for food. Like, okay, there you just realize that all they are thinking about and all they are caring about is someone who can provide food and water and shelter for them. And of course, also a little bit of love, right? But it's not important that, like, rationally, right? It's not important to be there if you really think about it. I don't want to be that father who isn't there at all. That's not what I'm saying. But if you rationally think about it, what is it what a child really needs and really desires? It's just like food, shelter, and a little bit of attention and love from. And this is what a mother can give so much more than me. And if I'm then there, like when the time I have left for the day, which is still plenty, right? It's still a couple of hours and stuff like that. I'm more than happy to actually spend it with my family then.
Yeah, and I think it's important to understand that it's yours and Katie's child. The way you guys discuss and you want to arrange things that makes you happy, and the child's going to be healthy. I don't think that's why we have like child services. If you were doing something wrong, it's always, I think it's so hard to know like I don't think there is any one right answer. It's just kind of what suits every relationship, every couple. So yeah, it's nuts. And I don't think it's a problem if we do this whole episode not answering any questions. Because
I was just thinking, like, okay, we are 42 minutes in. Should we now talk about you? Now we talked a lot about me. I mean, what have you been up to, Steve? I mean, you've been on holiday.
Really, nothing interesting compared to you. But I think the discussion, we've had a brilliant discussion.
You didn't receive a child.
I was. I mean,
you're now okay because you're now 200 pounds. Maybe it was just like Arnold Schwarzenegger that you are actually just carrying out a child or so.
That's where the extra stage weight came from, just carrying this child.
Exactly.
Actually, did you look at? This is a side interest. Like the baby's like weight, birth weight. Were they like? Yeah. In terms of genetic potential, they got that.
Oh, yeah. So the funny thing is, do you remember like 1 or 2 weeks before the actual birth, we've been to a doctor and she wasn't able to measure the head.
Right.
And they are always doing like estimations, right? And she was estimating the baby's weight to be like at around 3 kilograms, where we were already skeptical from that statement because the prior the prior times we've been to the doctor, she always measured it to be bigger and also heavier than the typical child is or baby is, right? So we were skeptical that in the last weeks, why isn't it gaining weight when the only thing that it actually does in the last weeks is gaining weight, right? So we expected that it's much, much heavier than this, and it turned out to be much, much heavier than this. Katie's So Katie had a couple of fears going into that birth or giving birth to that child. One was like a very long birth once again. Second one was that it's too painful and she doesn't get any kind of, what's it called again?
The painkiller.
Yeah, kind of pain. It's not really painkillers, but kind of
I forgot what it's called. The gas.
Numb it down.
Yeah.
Right. And these things didn't occur, and that the baby is weighing over 4 kilograms. And it turned out, or it came out with 4.3 kilograms, and it was 56 centimeters tall. So that is actually a big child. Yeah.
Okay, so we know when it's old enough, it's in the gym and it's getting jacked.
Hopefully. The first stage is set. So make the most out of it, baby.
Don't let the listeners down. We've said it now.
Exactly. Listen to this episode in 20 years from now. If you're not jacked by then, you are not my baby anymore. My baby boy.
So yeah, my week was, I can't even remember what happened. I guess it's been this week and then like, we have had, this is like 3 weeks catch up essentially. That's actually quite weird. So I finished
By the way, I've tried, just to interrupt you really quickly, I've tried to set up twice with Ryan and it didn't work out. First time was to do an error in the software. We couldn't figure out how to record it because Google Hangouts, they discontinued the service with YouTube, so couldn't record it over there, and we didn't have any kind of other software to do it with. And then secondly, we wanted to do it, and on that day the baby came. So yeah.
Damn. Yeah, because Ryan used to do podcasting, so I thought I guess he doesn't need the software, so he probably got rid of it or something, I guess.
He had it still, but it simply didn't work. Weirdly enough. Yeah.
So yeah, I had my final week of overreaching, and actually I'm really disappointed, a little bit disappointed in myself in that I think I got to a point with my food where it was just getting so difficult to eat enough, and I was force feeding for a long time actually. Probably that entire mesocycle was force feeding, if not more time than that. My body weight didn't really increase barely anything in that last mesocycle. I did go and hit like 200 pounds and then I came back down a little bit and I haven't hit that since. I am hovering at a body weight heavier than ever before, but it made me realize how I got potentially a little bit complacent in that when I got to that point at which I was force feeding, I probably needed to be more on top of my scale weight and making sure it's going up. And I do think it's important to see that going up over the long term, because I think you can quite easily get into complacency of just maintenance. And I think especially as you're more advanced, you kind of need that body weight to go up if you want to maximize growth in that sense. So I was kind of gutted when I look back at that, and also made me realize like my maintenance intake has got quite high. I'm maintaining like 3,000. Well, I was almost maintaining on what was over 4,000 calories, but my training volume is way lower now. So I'm on like 3,700, 800 maintaining. Then deloaded in the Lake District, which was kind of a holiday. It was a holiday, I guess, because I wasn't like formally working and having check-ins. But it didn't feel like a proper holiday because it was just like family time. Hanging out with my nieces and nephews who, a lot of the stuff, like being with them and then hearing about your birth and like hearing about all of this is just, I can see so much of it. And it's like, it's just such a new experience in life to have a child. I can only imagine, like, I just thinking about so many things of just like education, and then it's like, well, feeding, exercise, like every single little bit, like their development, they're so like plastic at those ages. It's incredible. So, but yeah, it was very, very relaxed. I think I was struggling to hit like 10,000 steps, even though we didn't do like any long hikes. It was just like talking, sitting around, kids jumping on me in the pool, which was quite fun, but also a little bit dangerous to my neck because it's just like launching on me. So that's fun. And then this past week has just been first week in the primer phase, which I think you're in your second week, aren't you? So, it's just a case of...
finished it yesterday.
I'm going to be like gutted because you're going to be a week done before me. But the really fortunate thing is, I think I already told you, or maybe I just put it on Instagram, was my actual gym. And I think this is ridiculous. It's closed for 2 weeks. Like that's like for a gym to be closed for 2 weeks, that's a long time. And then like even the Stockwell gym, which is like the alternative one to use, is closed for a period of time, and it might even overlap.
Really?
Yeah, it's kind of like, come on,
crazy.
guys. But like I said, the silver lining is it's at the perfect time. Like I've got the time to be able to walk to a further away gym. It's not like I'm not training twice daily. Volume sessions are taking, I don't know how long your sessions take, but some of mine are like half an hour. Others are like 45 minutes.
Yeah.
Leg sessions are a bit longer.
Sometimes it's just like where I'm a little bit surprised how quickly they are over.
They're tough, but they just go.
They are tough. They are very tough. I mean, right now, I'm back to squatting again and stuff like that. And like after 3 sets, it's just like, okay, squats are done here for the day. So I'm moving over to something like competition bench press, doing like 3 sets there. Like, okay, yeah. And I could feel it. I mean, on the first week, it's like we say in the Prima Phase ebook, I was sore.
Yeah.
I was sore on every single body part I was training. So, yeah.
I've been sore. I've noticed my chest is a little bit sore. It's actually the only new exercise I've introduced was barbell bent over rows, just because dumbbells only got to 38, and that's not bore. I should have made a joke. I realized instead
bore?
of saying bent over row, I should have been like bastard over road. I don't know. I don't know what the fuck it could have been. I could have thought of something better. So yeah, even actually doing that, I could feel it already on my back, how it was hitting it differently. It was really nice to actually feel the difference, because it's like, obviously, like barbell bent over row, easy bar bent over row, dumbbell bent over row. Those are like the main variants that I cycle through. They all are like uniquely different and hit you slightly differently. So that was cool.
Oh.
And then everything else is pretty much the same exercises, and I've deleted a lot. Like I'm not doing any fly movements, for example, and stuff like that, like we talk about in the Prima Phase.
Yeah, neither do I. Same goes for, because you talked about it in one of the voice messages. I'm not doing any kind of ab training and calf training at the moment as well. Just like the basic stuff. I think it is all right.
Yeah, I think so as well. I think I'm including it just for like sanity purposes more than anything. I'm just like, I'm very tempted to just get rid of calves, because it's just like, I'm just like, maybe if I remove them, they'd like suddenly get a growth spurt. I don't know. But yeah, that stuff doesn't take very long. Actually, it was really interesting. I probably shouldn't have done 3 sets of leg press today, because moving from 20 to 30 reps to then like 5 to 10 essentially, my quads were like fucked by 2 sets, and I was like, I'll do my third. I should. I'm going to see how my legs are tomorrow.
I had it with the same way with squats, because I haven't done them in a while, and it's just like on the second set it was feeling like, holy shit, what is going on? And I haven't been using like a lot of weight in comparison to what I've done in previous times, but it was most certainly enough.
So yeah, it's the Prima Phase, maintenance eating. I think it's a good psychological break, and a little bit of it's actually quite challenging. I find this, like the Prima Phase, because there's no structure and like things. So someone actually asked me on like one of my questions on Instagram, I never got back to it, was like, so what are you doing with extra time that maybe you have? And I was just, so I'm doing more reading, do maybe some more socializing, like with Charlotte, be able to do some extra things, and work. Like this is where it's all going into. And we have some projects coming, and everything's there. So there's always, even when like people get worried about spending less time in the gym, they have to have that hour in the gym. It's like, well, like, there's definitely other things and other priorities. And I certainly let some things, like my training takes up a lot of time towards the end of like a hypertrophy mesocycle twice daily training. So it's actually quite refreshing to have some extra time to take care of some things that hadn't been as well taken care of beforehand necessarily.
No, absolutely. And this is even more so the case for me on normal training blocks as well, that I was training twice daily as well, such as you. I don't know. Okay, I think I would love that now if I had like something like a home gym or so, right? Where you can easily do that when you feel like it. Okay, have the second session of the day. But right now, with all that commuting and all that kind of stuff, I can't be bothered, to be honest. I rather stay then at home and, I don't know, work or spend a little bit more time with my family, instead of spending another 2 to 3 hours of just getting to the gym, going back home again, and all that kind of stuff. And to me, it's funny because the people who think that they are like, okay, fuck, I always want to be at the gym, and most of the times the people who haven't been training for a very long time.
I certainly had my fill of it for a while.
Yeah,
so
me too.
It's nice to have less, but there's no, like you said, there's actually no way, if it was anything more of a commute than what my gym is, it's literally down the road. I wouldn't commit to that. It's too much. So yeah, it's definitely a refreshing, like psychologically, physiologically. I'm very excited to get back into, and I need to have a little bit more of a look at my plan, because I'd always just thought, yeah, after this, I'm going to go into a dieting phase. I'm going to have a look at show dates for next year and really plan backwards, because looking at I'm leaner than I thought I was, if that makes sense. I don't know. I looked at photos. The photos looked leaner to me than I looked in the mirror to myself for some reason. So I'm wondering if I need to start dieting yet, or if I do like just a mini cut after this and then go back into a little bit more massing and then primer after that. Just because I don't want to needlessly be lean too early, and I don't want to do an early qualifier, because I'm hoping, considering I qualified previously, is that I will still be able to qualify. I know the people have improved, but I'm hoping I've improved sufficiently to also be able to be at finals. And whilst I don't necessarily think I'm going to win or anything, I certainly want to put my stake there to be like top 3. Would be like a dream come true. So
absolutely.
Yeah, it's exciting times. And I guess you almost probably can't think about next year and competing yet, because you've just got too much going on.
No, honestly, I did just
awesome.
recently, and I really want to get going. And funny enough, I'm giving the experiment which we talked about in the past, and which James Krieger and Eric Lazar did a try as well. And my West is on its way to me already. It's being shipped already, so I'm prepared once the cut is starting. So I will start the first cutting phase with that weighted West, for fuck's sake, weighted West as well. And just giving it a try, and we see how that goes.
What's it called? Sorry.
A weighted West. Fucking hell, eh?
It's so good. It made me. I ended up. Charlotte got annoyed with me because I'd start saying wedgies instead of like veggies. I'd say wedgie. I just like it. It's cute.
Yeah. So I'm very much excited for that one, and especially now with that small gadget. I know that. So Eric did a fantastic video on that where he talked all about that West carrying on himself, and he basically says it very well that it's impractical. Like, if you are not training or working from at home, it's simply not feasible.
Yeah.
Right? Because people would just look weirdly at you. Like, he even flew and went to the airport with that thing, and people thought, like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Why are you wearing a bulletproof vest? And then they realized that it was actually a weighted vest for like weight loss, and they were just like, holy shit, we need to check that, right? Something like that. It's very impractical, but at the same time, if you got the luxury of doing something like that, for example, at home and stuff like that, then why not? And work your way towards a specific weight. Don't start with all the weight on the vest already from the get-go. Start with only the vest on, maybe, and then once you lose some weight, you counteract that with adding some weight to the vest, so that basically you're not losing weight on the scale. This is how I would do it, and then. Or that Eric also recommends it. And once you come to a point where you're very close to stage weight, and then you can slowly start to add weight even to maybe get some more out of it, right? So, but it fucks the traps, he says. Like going everything above 20 kilograms is simply not feasible, he said as well. So he started incorporating like wrist weights and also ankle weights as well. So that being said, like, it's going to be a very interesting experiment for myself as well.
I think it's one of those things. It's kind of like it's not necessary by any means. It's not magic, but it might make the process easier on yourself. Like many tools for, like, I don't know, it's like Suppress by Lenovo, probably something that is certainly not necessary, but it might make the process a bit more easier on yourself. And for some people that might be the difference between getting to 5% versus like 6%, which on stage could mean first to second place. So that's really
when
cool.
you take a look at what Eric is consuming at the moment,
3,000 calories.
Yeah, and he was did a DEXA scan, 4.6% of body fat at, what was it, 143 pounds, something like that. Light.
He's a little guy.
And still consuming a lot of, but very jacked, and still consuming a lot of calories. And I would even think, and this is something that he's assuming as well, that the recovery period will be easier on him as well, because he was able to keep his calories that high.
Yeah, you'd expect. So this is kind of like if you reverse into your final like stages of shows. So you're in a no deficit. You're basically maintaining and then always peaked. And then all you have to do is add a little bit of more above that. Whereas a lot of the time, and I've had clients like, you go like 1,000 calories more than you're currently consuming. It's like, oof, this is a lot of food. I easily go over this. So yeah, that's super interesting. Out of interest, I haven't seen the video. Where is it?
He posted it over on our Facebook group.
Oh, did he? Recently?
Yeah, there was someone asking about it. Posting something from James Krieger, and he commented then on it, with also posting that video. So you can find it, just like post it in the search bar over on our Facebook group.
Good plug for the Facebook group. Thank you, Eric.
Yeah, totally. Eric West or something like that. So
Weighted Vest, I guess. Yeah.
Well, yeah. I didn't want to say that another time. That's why I tried to avoid it.
Oh, this is so good.
Yeah. No, but then you can find it, and it's like half an hour long, where he just talks about the entire process and the pros, cons, all that kind of stuff.
And have you picked out your shows yet?
No, but it's probably going to be like the Southern Regionals, stuff like that, UK DFBA, and probably also BNBF. Yeah,
because
stuff like that.
I would be interested. I wonder if they would be the ones I might also pick. I would quite
most
like
likely.
To.
Yeah, most likely.
Because that would be.
I'm still
awesome.
Considering of doing an earlier show, because I've never done a show before, just to get my feet wet and all that kind of stuff. So that it's not like, okay, here's the 10th of August and there are not many shows left.
Yeah,
I'm not expecting to come to qualify for finals or so, right? But if I go in there, of course I want to be my very best and perform my very best. And if it's enough to come to qualify for finals, perfect. If not, hey, perfect as well. Especially with the caliber that is about to compete next year, it's going to be a very, very tough one. But this is the beauty about it, especially competing with a lot of people you know.
Yeah, that's the great thing is, once you've competed, or at least versus the first time I competed to the second time and now this third time, assuming I do end up competing, because I always say, you know, something could happen, like for both of us. Then, yeah, you know more people. We've got more support. Like, there's people who invested in you. And I seriously, at the moment, I don't, like, people talk about the pressure of social media and stuff. I don't really feel it so much. If anything, it just helps. I think it will help adherence, because I don't think necessarily anyone's thinking, oh, Steve Hall's going to be a, like, turn pro necessarily. So it's not like, that's
except for me.
Except
you're huge disappointment if you don't get that status.
I will definitely be utilizing Pascal a lot to give me some blunt feedback on how, like, my fat glute is going.
Yeah. the left side.
Yeah. It was the left. My right side still has slight lines in it when I do a side chest. It's ridiculous. It's just, that's crazy. That's just how
what is going on with that right side?
Sense. Cool. So I think we've probably talked enough.
Yeah, let's cut it here.
I'm
happy to be back though.
Yes.
Happy to be back. Yeah, it's been a pleasure to finally be back talking to you, Steve. To be very honest with the listeners here, we just hit the record button and just got going. Steve hasn't heard my story as well.
No.
So, yeah.
It's always the best way. And yes, it's been a pleasure, and I hope people have enjoyed it. Apologies we didn't get to any questions, but we'll be back next week, and I'm sure we'll have just half an hour of answering questions again.
And now the song comes into fading in. The boys are back in town. The boys are back in town. The boys are back in town. But then it's probably going to be taken down by YouTube.
So, you can just sing it. You can sing it out.
Okay. So bye, guys. Boys are back in town. Boys are back in town. Boys.